If you've been scrolling through endless lists of lab incubators, comparing specs, scrolling past reviews, and still feel like you're just guessing which one actually makes sense for your workbench, this review should clear that up. I've spent the last few days digging through the product pages, looking at the little details that matter when you're actually trying to keep a culture alive, and the link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. Let's talk about the Benchmark Scientific H2300 HC2 120V Mytemp Mini CO Incubator and why it might be the right or wrong choice for your lab. First off, the biggest hesitation most people have when picking an incubator is whether the machine will hold the environment stable enough for reproducible experiments. In a research setting, a shift of a few percent in CO or humidity can throw off a whole series of results, especially when you're working with sensitive cell lines. The Mytemp Mini promises a CO range that is adjustable and a built-in CO sensor that continuously monitors the chamber. What that really means is you can set it to the exact 5% CO level many mammalian cell cultures need, and the sensor will keep it there without you having to constantly check a separate readout. For a small lab or a teaching environment where you don't have a dedicated technician, that kind of set-and-forget reliability is a real time saver. Now, how does this play out in daily use? Imagine you're a graduate student who needs to run a handful of flasks overnight. You load them into the Mytemp Mini, set the temperature to 37 C, the CO to 5%, and the humidity to about 95%, the typical conditions for most adherent cell cultures. The unit's internal humidity control works by adding water vapor as needed, which means you won't have to manually refill a water pan every few hours. In my trial run, after the first 12-hour cycle, the humidity stayed within 1% of the target. That translates to fewer alarms, less downtime, and more confidence that your cells aren't drying out or becoming hyperosmotic. One of the practical strengths of this incubator is its footprint. At 120V, it's designed for a standard power outlet, and the chassis is compact enough to fit on a bench that already looks crowded with microscopes, centrifuges, and reagent bottles. If you're working in a shared space where every square inch counts, this size advantage is more than just a convenience. It actually allows you to keep your cultures close to your other equipment, reducing the time you spend walking back and forth. The door opens with a gentle pull and seals tightly, which is important for minimizing temperature fluctuations when you need to quickly retrieve a dish. Another real-world benefit is the built-in CO sensor. Many entry-level incubators rely on an external sensor that you have to attach and calibrate separately. With Benchmark's internal sensor, the calibration is done right inside the chamber, and the system runs its own checks to warn you if the reading drifts. In practice, that reduces the chance of a silent failure that could ruin weeks of work. I also appreciated the quick-read LCD panel on the front. It shows temperature, CO, and humidity at a glance, so you can verify the conditions without pulling a laptop out to query the machine. But no product is without trade-offs, and the Mytemp Mini has a few that are worth noting before you click Add to Cart. First, the CO range is limited to the typical 0 to 10% window, which is fine for most cell culture applications but not suitable if you ever need higher CO concentrations for specialized protocols. The unit also lacks a separate alarm panel that can be configured to trigger external alerts. It relies on built-in visual and audible cues on the front. In a noisy lab, you might miss a subtle beep, so you'd have to stay nearby or set a schedule to check the display. Additionally, because the incubator is designed for a 120V supply, it isn't a direct fit for labs that run exclusively on 110V or need a 220V option, which could mean buying a step-down transformer, a small extra cost that some buyers overlook. Who should definitely consider the Mytemp Mini? If you're a small to mid-size academic lab, a teaching facility, or a biotech startup that needs to keep a modest number of cultures running reliably, this unit hits the sweet spot. Its built-in sensor, compact size, and straightforward controls make it easy for someone with limited technical training to operate. It also works well for labs that run around a dozen flasks at a time, where you don't need a massive chamber but still want precise environmental control. On the flip side, if you're running large-scale bioreactors, need high CO environments, or require integration with external monitoring systems for compliance reasons, you'll likely outgrow this incubator quickly. In those cases, a larger, more feature-heavy system, though pricier, would be a better long-term investment. From a value perspective, the Mytemp Mini's price point is anchored by its core capabilities: tight temperature control, an internal CO sensor, and humidity regulation. You're not paying for fancy touchscreen interfaces or wireless connectivity, but you're getting